Roy is not a dog. By Esmé Shapiro and Newell Kaufman. Weasel lived on Lilypod Lane, where everyone knew everything about everybody. Where the light from the Lollylumbo's TV came on promptly with the morning news. Where each day Miss Lilac watered her wilty wisteria, and where, with every sunrise, Old Man Earl put out his stinky milk bottles. Yes, Weasel knew all the neighbors on his newspaper route, except for the one who lived in the peculiar house at the end of Lilypod Lane. The fancy sign above the door said Roy, but the mysterious Roy always kept to himself. Whoever Roy was, he must be as unique as the house he lived in, thought Weasel, as great as the fire hydrant-shaped hedges he had sculpted, as storied as the archway made of bones that adorned the path. Was Roy a king from a faraway land, retiring to Lilypod Lane after a life lived in a castle? Or was he a tightrope walker, practicing flips and twirls and dips and drops each night after dinner? Or perhaps Roy was an explorer who had seen the far reaches of the earth. But no, Roy was more remarkable than any of those daydreams. He appeared to have furry ears that flapped and fluttered in the wind, and a fuzzy snout that could probably sniff Weasel from a mile away. Could it be that Roy was a dog? A dog who was frying an egg? Weasel was in awe. A dog living on its own must be quite a dog. Weasel biked past the bright light of the Lollylumbo's blaring screen, sped right by Miss Lilac's neglected nasturtiums, and bolted through Old Man Earl's milk bottles. Weasel biked as fast as he could to tell his friend Pam Pam the news. Pam Pam! Pam Pam! The person who lives in that odd house with the bone archway is not a person at all. He's a dog. Weasel told her all about Roy's floppy ears and the fried egg. Who do you think you are, Weasel? A detective? Said Pam Pam. First of all, not once in history has a dog fried an egg. Second, dogs aren't the only ones with big floppy ears. What about the world-renowned chef, Croque Dogo? Her floppy ears were legendary. She could toss 100 pizza pies a day with each earlobe. Your evidence is faulty, Weasel. Roy most certainly is not a dog. Bark, bark, yip, yip. But then, who was Roy? I've never heard a person yip quite like that, said Weasel. Plenty of singers can hit those high notes, said Pam Pam. What about the famous falsetto Stromboli Pooch, who could shatter glass and make fish jump from the sea with the sound of his voice alone? Weasel, you have failed to impress me yet again. But why on earth would a human collect so many bones? Wondered Weasel. Well, what about the archaeologist Profiterole Mutt Jones? It's rumored she has an entire mansion full of prehistoric bones, said Pam Pam. Like I said, Weasel, your evidence is faulty. Roy is definitely not a dog. Everyone seemed to agree with Pam Pam. No one batted an eye at their hairy neighbor. The Lollylumbo's television set was as loud as ever. Miss Lilac's disappointing daffodils swayed glumly in the wind, and Old Man Earl's milk bottles rolled about on his stoop like on any other day. Could no one else see that Roy was indubitably a dog? One cold, crisp morning, while delivering the paper, Weasel had an idea about how to get proof. Perhaps he was a detective after all. When Weasel got to Roy's house, it wasn't a newspaper he threw. It was a stick. I know you're a dog, said Weasel. You fetched me that stick. It was only polite, panted Roy. I thought it was yours. The next day, Roy's newspaper came with a special treat. I know you're a dog, said Weasel. You ate that raw steak. I'm just a sophisticated eater, Roy drooled. Haven't you ever heard of steak tartare? Weasel hadn't. He felt defeated. Maybe he wasn't a detective after all. But that's when Pam Pam walked by. Cat? Kitty? Ruff, ruff, ruff. Woof. Meow? It's not what it looks like. Meow. It looks like what it is, exclaimed Weasel. I've cracked the case. You are without a doubtably a dog. Well, okay, so I'm a dog, said Roy, but that doesn't make me any less of a person. I read the morning paper. I can fry an egg better than most. I have a driver's license, and I even do my taxes. Wow. You're right, said Weasel. That's more than most of the people I know. I can't drive. My mom can't fry an egg at all. My dad hasn't read in years, and I don't even know what taxes are. That meant a lot to Roy. I'm sorry that we figured out your secret, said Weasel. It's all right, said Roy. That's what detectives do. Plus, no one should ever be ashamed of who they are. I am 3 dogs in a trench coat, and I am proud. You'd be surprised what you'd learn if you got to know your neighbors, said Roy. And maybe he was right. Weasel, Pam Pam, and Roy lived on Lilypod Lane, where everyone knew everything about everybody. But still, there was so much to discover. The